Welcome, everyone. This is Destin Garrick, and you are watching or listening to, or however you're consuming this media, the Decoding Women podcast. This podcast is really two podcasts in one, as we're split into two different expressions. On Tuesdays, generally, we will be bringing on a different woman, attractive woman, interesting woman, influential woman, who we're going to attempt to decode. My job is to dive into deep conversation with her about sex, about the relationships, her experiences of men, the good, the bad, the ugly, her experiences of being a woman, and to draw out the things from her that you're not typically hearing. And then also to play translator or decoder from to help take like what she's saying and translate it in a way that's easier for you to hear, understand, really take in, know what to do with, as well as to do the same thing with the things that she's not saying, because sometimes that's where the greatest communication is really occurring, the things that we most need to get, you know? And then the other half of the podcast on Thursdays, like today, I will be diving in with a different, unique man who is uh, in his own process, as we all are, in having something that's going on with his sexuality, his relationships with women, or his sense of himself as a man and how to be a man in this modern world. I have yet to meet a man ever in my life who doesn't have at least something going on in at least one of these areas. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're playing with. And today, my male guest, who's simply going by Jake, Jake thought he was doing fine in life until suddenly it all came crashing down. Maybe you're familiar with it. Maybe you're yet to be familiar with it. He went through some absolutely massive shifts by stepping into practices primarily around presence, emotions, and coaching that helped him, unwind or get back on top of these things that had all been crashing down. But there's still a lot to address, the things that he's still trying to move through. And that's what we're going to be playing with today. His shifts included working with and moving through addictions to weed, alcohol, and video games, navigating a career blow up and into a more dream job. He was dealing with a potential divorce with his wife, and the feeling of disconnect with his kids. All this, and quite honestly, a lot more, as you're going to hear as we bring him on. I'm actually quite excited about some of the other things that we start to pick out during our like in our process of trying to figure out if he was going to come onto the show or not, particularly these elements of his injury or accident that led him to fall into his more feminine, softer expressions, while his wife was craving a more intense masculinity being pulled from him, and how that ended up playing a role in their near divorce, as well as to her and his various fantasies around BDSM and playing with power intentionally, and the fears, the fantasies, and the fallout of diving into such things within the context of marriage and beyond. So these are just a few of the things that I think we're going to end up uncovering today. And thank you for joining us. We have our chat box open, so please do feel free to use it. We're using like what's brand new technology for me. So if something ends up being glitchy, sorry in advance. Hopefully not. We've been working hard to improve it all, hours and hours. So welcome. And with that, welcome, Jake. Or look at that, Jake Trigg. You are revealed.
Destin, glad to be here.
Yeah, man. I want to really start off by acknowledging you for your courage in being here. Yeah, look at that face. I let you know right from the start that we're gonna go in deep. This is not like oh, let's have some nice conversation. And more than anything, like, this is not a time, as many of us end up doing, either, well, men, quite frankly, have a tendency to just kind of be quiet about these things and try to figure it all out on our own, which, quite frankly, sometimes works, but quite often we need more. We need more than that. We need support. We need brotherhood. We need mentors, people who have gone before us. We need experts. We need professional support. We need all these things that massively help yeah, maybe it's possible to figure some things out on your own, but it's never quite as much, and certainly not as much fun as when you're doing it with that support. And look at this, we have our first comment of the show. Whoop whoop, raising them up, Dustin, brilliant. Thank you, Eva. And Jake and I are doing that together now. So with that, Jake, I guess I gave my introduction of you, but I'd like to hear a little bit from you. Who are you and what's going on in your world?
Yeah, I mean, that was quite the introduction. I've never had an intro like that. I think what the reason I'm here is really just in a quest for vulnerability. I think you hit it spot on that most of my life was very reserved and holding in and keeping everything to myself. And since I started, opening up and I didn't have a choice and had to start expressing. And it's just been such an amazing journey since then. And so that's what this was. The opportunity came, and I'm a big fan of your work, and I know that you're a great person and coach, and so I thought it'd be a great opportunity to try to get vulnerable and share some things that I've been very nervous about for a while.
Well, why don't we just dive right into there? When you say that some things that you've been really nervous about for a while, you know what you're talking about. Let's just start there. What have you been nervous about? What is it that you're both nervous and excited about and nervous about sharing with us and everybody who's watching or will watch this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I'm working through right now is the decision about my marriage. And so currently separated from my wife for about a year, and we've reconciled quite a bit, but now in my mind, I need to make a decision if I want to, if I want to stay with her forever, right? And I need to decide that. And right now I'm struggling. There's the logic side, and then there's just so many elements. It's a very tough decision to make.
Yeah, and unfortunately, many people, many men and women, end up finding themselves in that position at some point. And let's back things up a little bit. Why are you in that consideration? I'm going to guess that when you made the decision to marry, this is the furthest thing from your mind.
Absolutely.
Or certainly the first thing you wanted to be thinking about. And yes, something along the lines, most likely many things across time, ended up leading you to this place. Share with us a little bit of backstory on that.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right, so we've been married for 7 years now, and we have 2 young kids. So we've got 2 very young kids, both under the ages of 6, and that's what happened. Kids happened. Surprise. So we had definitely planned to have kids, and I think a big part of it, a big part of the friction between us was depression that I have worked through, and she wasn't expecting that and didn't know how to handle that. And when it comes in waves and periods for me, work through it, but it was a big surprise for her. But that alone, things were getting better. So we're like, okay, great. Figured it out. It's not the end of the world. Things are getting better. And then about 2 years ago, I was hit by a car, and it was a pretty major accident, broke my shoulder and my elbow, and went to the hospital. It took quite a long time, like 6 weeks of just sitting in bed, basically, where that's really what awakened me. Like it just changed so much in my life.
What do you mean by it awakened you? How did this accident awaken you?
Something flipped. Like ever since then, there's just been like a push to all of the emotions that I kept bottled in for so long, basically my whole life, not really expressing emotions. Ever since that wreck, like I haven't been able to not express them, and so they started leaking out in unhealthy ways.
Like
So,
how?
yeah, so a lot of anger that I had from basically throughout my life started leaking out in our relationship.
So were you expressing the anger at your wife?
I was because she was the part, like my mirror, right? Like she was the person closest to me. And and the anger came out. There was some triggering childhood stuff too, where in me needing to get help, like being completely helpless, not being able to stand or feed. I could
Mhm.
feed myself, but that sort of triggered this young person that had all of these needs.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I thought
So
at the
hold on. So in
time,
other words, prior to that, you were, you know, being a man, armoring up. You've got no needs. You're there to provide, to protect, to take care of other people and other people's needs. You will be that emotionless robot.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was career
Uh,
focused, right? Like everything was about career, providing for the family. I was the only
mhm.
person working at the time because she was taking care of the kids. And I thought that's what society tells us is what we're supposed to do. So I thought,
Yeah.
okay, everything's fine.
Mhm.
It wasn't though.
So you were over the course of that time, there were all these needs of yours that you weren't even particularly aware that you were having because they were buried down so deep. But they were the lack of them being met was building up over this time. And when you were in this accident and you were basically in this place where you literally could not hold yourself together in this way anymore, you it all those buried things started to come to the surface, and with that an anger and resentment for them to not being met in the past. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm going to speak to this for a moment because unfortunately I've had my own version of this, and um, and particularly there's an element of this that I've learned, like, we have to take responsibility for. On one hand, meaning what's her what's her responsibility and what's our responsibility. There's a big argument to be had for a larger social conditioning responsibility, uh, but within ourselves, it's like, why wasn't she meeting? Why wasn't she meeting my needs that I would not express to her or let her know about in any way, shape, or form?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So I mean, it's great that you have that awareness already at this point. I think it took me a long time to really recognize. The other way it used to show up for me a lot was this: um, I would let my boundaries get trampled over all the time, and I'd be really upset about it. But I would never communicate those boundaries. I would never do anything to really maintain those boundaries, except for when I'd blow up about the fact that my boundaries are being crossed.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds
Mm.
familiar, right? If I didn't have the tools or the practice of expressing my
Mhm.
own needs in a way, and so that anger really wasn't at her. I was angry at myself, but
Mhm.
she was the person that I expressed it towards.
And so, what was the impact of that on her?
Um, Tremendous, right? Like, I mean, it made her. I think the biggest thing is it made her fearful,
Mhm.
right? So it was like, here's this person that I know and I love, but now there's this divide between us, and now he's saying these things that are showing me that he doesn't love me.
Mm.
Whereas it really was I didn't love myself, but she again was
So again, different people's experiences end up being having their own unique flavor. However, there can be this other element, like when a woman is, up close and personal with a man's anger, his rage, what have you. Yes, there can be this feeling of maybe he doesn't really love me, but there can also be this fear element. This, is this person going to harm me? And can I really trust him? I thought I could trust him, but I've never seen this side of him before. Is this who he really is? Can I really trust him? And then this further shutting down or her own armoring starts to surface.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean that I think you hit it on with fear, right? It was she was afraid.
Mhm.
Um, yep,
I mean,
spot on.
a many millennia history here where women, generally speaking, meaning more often than not, are the smaller bodied and less muscled um, ones of us. And so there is this knowing, not just in their own personal experience, but this whole like generational lineage that at any moment, these larger, stronger beings that are men could harm them. Even if you would never, there's still this knowing, but if you wanted to, you'd very limited in what you could do.
Right.
And so I'm in this, I'm speaking this not just, honestly, not just to you, but really to the men listening, as I'm decoding women. This is a really big thing that, quite honestly, I think that more men need to really understand at a core level, that this is something that exists inside of women on some level, pretty much universally, pretty much all the time. Maybe more buried, but it's always somewhere in there.
Yep. Yeah. Walking down the street, right? Like everything that a woman does, they have to consider their own safety and protection.
So then, even like, then what happens when they feel like they have to be considering their own safety and protection with the men that they love and the men that they live with?
Right. So I
there's
think,
a very core primal elements that come up here, and just kind of making sure that that's dropped into your awareness space as we continue to unpack all of this. So here you are, you're recovering in bed 6 weeks. You're barely able to move. You can't really take care of yourself very well. And now all of these suppressed emotions and feelings and needs are coming to the surface. One primary way in which they're being expressed is through anger directed at your wife. What happens now?
yeah. So we got right to the root of the matter, but I think it's important that, like, there was so much happening outside of this. Like, I think this is the core thing, but the way that it like manifested or showed itself was about household chores and, you know, the maintenance of the house, right? So where we'd argue the most was over, you know, like who had to do what, and then over fairness, right? And in my mind, I have a very different picture of it now, but I was thinking, okay, I'm a man. I have to work, and I have to provide for my family, and she doesn't have to work. And so I was thinking, and again in my head, I was like, that means that she can take care of the house mostly. And so I thought that the things that I did were plenty, and she continued to push those boundaries or those edges for me because I'm not very comfortable doing all this stuff. And that was our constant friction day to day, was like, who's doing the dishes, who's preparing meals.
So even while you were laid up in bed recovering?
Yes, yeah, during that, and then afterwards as well. So that was kind of where my anger was coming from, because it was thinking that these expectations were beyond what I could do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, and I would try to meet them, and then it would go well for a while, and then there'd be more to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So by meet them, meaning this didn't feel good to you. It felt there was sort of this feeling of injustice inside of you around this. You know, your belief system as to like what was fair and what was not. However, you were transgressing your own kind of your belief around what you could do and what was fair to be doing, and did them anyway in order to placate her, keep a sense of peace, make her happy. Which is it?
Yeah. Why did I do the things? I mean, I did it because I thought that they were fair asks, but I was also thinking that if I did them, then it would be met with, you know, appreciation or acknowledgement. I didn't think it would be met with, oh, now here's something else that we need to do too. But, you know, in hindsight, I see that it was an overwhelming situation for her. She was also triggered.
Sure.
She had some childhood stuff with her mother that got injured. And so that, seeing that with me, was regressing her too.
Got it.
So we were both these two triggered people.
Yeah, when you have two people who are now reverting back to some deep childhood wounds, some old deep hurts, and then we have one another to unleash it all onto. And I'm curious, you're speaking about primarily in the past tense. So what happened? What changed?
What's changed since then?
Mm-hmm.
Everything. Everything. So we've been separated and living in different houses for a year, and I think that taught us.
What precipitated the separation? Like what?
So it was basically, it was my decision to say that this is not a healthy environment,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking that if we had some space, because we actually did a trial where I got an Airbnb for a month, and I went and did that, and for me it was incredibly healing, but it didn't help her. She saw it as running away, and this is
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, out of curiosity, you see you have 2 young children, both under 6. Where were they in this context when you were off at this Airbnb?
They
Were they
were
with her? Were they with you? Were they moving?
they were with her. Yep.
So did she feel this sense of, okay, so you just don't want to deal with things, you're gone, and I'm now stuck with, managing 2 small children, which, having 2 small children myself, I know how big of a task that is.
Right. Yeah. That's it exactly. I mean, I needed an environment that wasn't toxic, constant. I needed to be able to focus on myself in order to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it wasn't really an option. Like if I stayed there, it would have gotten worse, because we had done so much therapy. We went to, weekend focused therapy. We tried everything for over the course of like a year.
So I'll say that in an ideal world, what in an ideal world, what you probably would have needed most from you in that situation would be that kind of grounded clarity of, I know that this is not going to be easy, and I'm sorry for the impact it's going to have on you, and I need to do this in order to heal, because until I heal, I'm not going to be able to show up for you and the family the way that I want to, and the way that I know that you want and need it to. And then on top of that, like what can we do to help to help make this time period that we're apart, for you to be as supported as possible within that. We might not be able to do everything, but whatever, if we put both our minds on it, maybe there's something that we can do so that you're not just feeling abandoned. Because chances are that's what she felt, abandoned.
Yes. Yeah. If I was able to express those words at the time, I'm sure it would have helped quite a bit.
Yeah, like I said, in an ideal world, it's a lot easier when we're like, not triggered, not emotionally entangled in it, to be able to see and know it at that time. But these elements of so again, the decoding women element, and trying to understand, helping men, including you, understand a woman's experience, a woman's perspective. So far, we've uncovered over here that let's remove her triggers and the shit that she's internally dealing with. She has experienced your anger and your rage as you're expressing all sorts of old stuff that's now being directed straight at her, which has left her feeling afraid, a fear within her, a lack of safety. And then with you going to stay at this Airbnb, etc., there was a feeling of being abandoned, which once again also can hit that feeling, that need of security and safety that so many women have and so many women seek from the man in their life. So then what? Then what happened?
COVID.
I've heard of it.
yeah, so then we moved back in together after the temporary break. And then we had the ice storms here in Texas, where we were out with power, which was another very traumatic, triggering event. And at that time, we weren't really working well together. You know,
Mhm.
still. So at that point, it was I got an apartment for a temporary place. We both
Was it
agreed.
during the storms?
Yeah, it was shortly after. It was
After,
shortly
okay.
after. We talked about it during the storms, and we're like,
Mhm.
we talked about it quite a bit, and it was a decision that we both came to. It was basically my decision, but again, we talked through it. She probably didn't feel like she had a decision in that matter.
Okay.
But again, in my mind, I was thinking this is going to be temporary. We need some space so that we can each kind of work on our own stuff.
How long did you end up being in this separate Airbnb for?
The Airbnb was a month, and then the apartment it's been about a year. So
Okay. Did one go straight into the other, or did you go back home first?
we moved back home. Yeah,
For how long?
I moved back in. Like 6 months.
Okay. So you stepped away for a month, you came back for 6 months, and then you left again. So I'm curious about that time period. Like, what was different when you stepped back in? What was different within you? And what did you notice that was different about her? And then how did that change over over those next several months?
I don't think so. I felt a lot better personally,
Mm-hmm.
but because of that distance, we weren't any closer together. So
Mm-hmm.
during that 6 months, it was, not very much interaction. Although we did one weekend course imago therapy,
Mm-hmm.
which I actually really like. I think it can serve quite a bit.
I've heard great things about Imago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially the dialogue, like the listening dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't work. It
Okay.
actually taught me a lot that now that I see in our relationship.
So what happens quite often, and you've done a lot of these things, so you probably know this at this point, is that quite often couples only end up seeking support around their relationship when shit has hit the fan. When things are an absolute mess and they might be on the verge of breakup. Okay, last ditch effort, let's get some external support. And then it's like, okay, they get this external support and they learn all these tools, but the tools really would work so much better, I don't know, more preventatively
Mhm.
versus after things have completely fucking falling apart and now you're trying to put them back together. It's not that they can't, that there aren't things that can support in those situations. There absolutely are and can, but this is something that comes up quite a bit. Quite often I'm a big fan at this point, and like what my wife and I have continued to do now is what we call relationship hygiene. We just try to make it so that we're always doing something uh, to keep our relationship hygiene up. We're always either working with some like couples therapist, coach. We're in some sort of seminar together. We're doing some sort of online thing together. We're just always doing something so that like we're keeping things. It's like brushing your teeth, versus only brushing your teeth. And Jake, your video might be frozen. At first, I thought you were being very good at being still. I'm going to wait for you to come back on. I'm going to speak in the meantime. If you are able to hear me, my suggestion would be, there you are.
I can hear
Oh,
you fine. I think the
okay.
video.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. We're here now. So, um, it'd be like if you only brushed your teeth after you had a cavity. Thing is, the cavity is there now. You're brushing the teeth is going to be minimally supportive. of that cavity, but it's great prevention. So, so the tools that you have are going to serve the things that you got through Imago, etc., are going to serve you moving forward, no matter what, including even if you do choose to divorce in future relationships. If you're able to bring these tools into these relationships, from the start instead of after everything's fucked. And you never know. We're still in this process. Like if the two of you do get to this place where you're choosing this, really choosing this, you both say, okay, I'm not 1 foot in, 1 foot out anymore, which it kind of sounds like is this state you two are both in at the moment. But where you both decide, okay, all in. It may be work, it may take time, but we're all in on choosing this and doing this. And so even me speaking those words, like how does that hit you in this moment? Just that notion of going all in, being like, fuck, well, whatever it takes, I'm choosing this.
Yeah. I'm all for it. There's reservations. So I want to say that, but there's still reservations. Yeah.
Okay. So when you say you want to say that, why is this happening now? I went to respond to somebody's chat in here, and now it's giving me a login page. I want to log in. What happens if I do that login and all of a sudden it like takes me out of this page with you? All right, so maybe we could see if we could edit this out. You said that there are reservations, so there is a part of you that very much wants to see this continue. That wants. It sounds like most likely you and your wife to both be in this choosing, to both be in the we are doing this together, and no matter what, we're making it work. We're making it happen. And you said there's reservations. What would you say those reservations are? I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say the biggest reservation is, well, what if I go all in and it doesn't work, and I'm still unhappy, she's unhappy, will have just been more pain and struggle. Is it that, or is it something else?
I think a lot of it is logistics and the kids. And so in that, what I mean is that it's difficult thinking about how we would do that now, where we have very opposite schedules, where we're each responsible for the kids.
So what you're I'm just trying to get clarity here. Do you mean it's hard for you to understand how you would stay together, or it's hard for you to imagine how you would go apart?
How we would rekindle, how we would date, right?
Okay.
So there's an element of each of us having kids, very separate schedules. There's also a concern of like, what would it show the kids if we tried to do something? So we've actually talked about moving in together again. So we have the story we've painted is not this is the fall. We haven't talked anything about what has happened
since. Yeah, we're making our way through.
Yeah. So the concern, I mean, I think a lot of it is still fear around being hurt again, for sure. And the impact of the kids if we tried to do something and then it doesn't work out. For them to see us together and then have to go through it again.
So the fear being that they've already had to go through the two of you separating. Would it be more traumatizing to see you, okay, trying again, and then, oh wait, no, you're separating again?
Right. Okay. Exactly. To give a sort of false hope.
So if you, I want to hear a little bit more about the space between then and now. I'm also still very curious about some of the things that came up in our initial conversations, particularly about this BDSM flavor and element that's kind of arisen in your conversations between the two of you. Partly because it is a major thing, and in which case it's got to be having some sort of impact on this whole dance that you two are in, and two, it makes for good entertaining content. So what's going on there?
All right. So during our separation, we decided that we wanted to see other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big driving factor of the separation too.
Mm-hmm.
In knowing that us between ourselves weren't getting along, can we open up and see other people and maybe find some happiness there?
Mm-hmm.
Which I have a very different perception now than back then. But so we each started dating. And so I initially had so much fun.
So much.
So much fun. It was so validating, right? It was like after living for a while with someone that I perceived as negative, that reflected my own negativity back on me. Say, suddenly like being met with positivity and like really good relationships, made some friends.
Women who are showing themselves as like actually like really attracted to you, interested in you, seeing your best qualities and reflecting those back to you. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like having fun together, wanting to be together. And yeah, totally. Having good sex as a big part of it, of course.
Always a plus.
Yeah, it was a lot of validation, right? Because I think that as men, we put so much of our worth in our relationships, and I think this is a big lesson that I've learned in terms of love. Where before, I sought love so much exterior, and something part of my work that I've done quite a bit about, one of the biggest shifts for me was actually feeling self-love and like starting to know what that really is.
So this is a notion that quite honestly a lot of men struggle with. It's in part because it's not generally something that we're taught, especially as men. I mean, women have their bubble baths and such, but like, what is the male equivalent there? Where, first of all, how are you defining self-love?
Right. I think it's the little acts that we do for ourselves. Like for me, it's taking walks in the morning. It's doing yoga in the morning. It's reading. It's setting aside all of the things that I used to do that were bad for me, which we haven't even really talked about, addictions, like all of that stuff. It's like dropping that and replacing it with conscious decisions, things that are actually good for us, that we enjoy. And for me, it's been really small things. It's going to the library, it's reading books, it's taking bike rides, it's playing basketball.
So things that really light you up, enliven you, have you feel good in your body and good with yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. Okay. So prior, you kind of just buried that while you focused on being a good provider and seeking all of that validation and love to be coming from outside of you, particularly your wife. Is that right?
Yeah, right. So there was this, there was a sense that my worth was really my job, right? Like that's where what I was taught, and it's my career was pretty much it. I mean, I am an artistic guy. I have artistic, lots of creative outlets, but for the most part, you go to a party or you go out and meet people. It's, oh, how's your work going, right? Like that's the question that I was personally asked all the time, and I'm a person. I want to talk about more than just work, but I didn't know that, and so work was pretty much everything, which doesn't give a lot of self-love if it's just performing this thing for a company.
Sure. So BDSM, What's up here?
Fast forward. Yeah. So it was, it's been probably a few months now. But it was our first date again together.
Mm-hmm. So how
Um,
long were you separated by this point?
uh, Probably 10 months.
Okay, so separated for 10 months and
5 days.
dating other people, and then you decide, let's see what it's like to date one another once more.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
What do you think what spurred that, like on both of your parts?
Hmm. I think it was on my part, it was a lot. I mean, it was so much on my part. But it was really, having to do everything myself, it definitely gave me a lot of appreciation for everything that she did.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
now I have the kids half the time for myself. I work, I have to take care of the home because I have my own home. And that was
Mm-hmm.
a big learning curve, right? Having these two young kids all to myself has been the biggest teacher. The kids have
Yeah.
been by far my biggest teacher, and I'm so grateful for them. Um, so there was that realization and more appreciation for what she does, what she did,
Mm-hmm.
what she does. And there was also, a lot of healing personally. And then I know there was some healing on her side as well. And I think that gave us a different perspective. And so, and it was also conversations that we had, right? Because we're still uh, about 6 months after the separation, maybe a little bit sooner than that, all of the triggering stopped. And then we started to have more conversations.
But you mean that the like whenever you two would speak, the triggering being it would turn into some blowout, some thing. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't necessary. It's not even necessarily a blowout, right? Because we're both like fairly, um, I don't know what the word was, not reserved, but fairly like we don't really yell all that too much. And so it was more of a feeling. It was more like an energetic level, like anxiety between us, right? It's like an
Mhm.
uncertainty of if we're safe around each other.
Got it.
Um,
Great. Great.
yep.
So you decide
So
to
that went
start
away.
dating. Mm-hmm.
So we decided that we should try it out again. So we were like, hey, yes. So we go on a date, and we've had a couple of therapy sessions together. And I think that was kind of what triggered it. So one of the first therapy session, it was getting clarity and asking if she wanted a divorce. And then that session, she's like, yes, I want a divorce.
Hmm.
And by the second session, right before the second session, I wrote an apology letter, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
was probably a big turning point for her, actually,
Mm-hmm.
in just saying like, here's all the things I am sorry for that I wish went differently. And I wanted to share that, not necessarily like even for her. That was mainly for me.
It's great.
Um, and so that I think was a big thing. And then the second session, she's like, okay, well maybe now I don't know. I was like,
So
okay,
I want to pause here for a moment.
yeah,
A lot of men, when they would hear the statement of "Yes, I want a divorce" from their, hearing that from their wife, um, a lot of men would just throw up their hands and be like, "Okay, well, she said what she wants, and that's that. I just have to accept this, and if I may hate it, and drink myself to sleep every night now, whatever." But but she made up her mind, so it is. And what you experience here, I think, is more often the deeper truth here is that women are by and large emotional creatures. They follow tr- their emotional truth of the moment. Men have a tendency to be more like say it, done, and then we can project our way of doing things onto our partners. But um, all she needed to be open was to feel, it sounds here, to feel like there is some sense of ownership of the impact that she has felt, uh, from you. She was seeking something to give her a hope that could be different. And when she was asked that question in the first session, it sounds like she did not have hope that it could be. She didn't have a vision that she could believe in for the two of you. And after you made this gesture, not gesture, uh, it's that it didn't. That sounds like you said you did just for yourself. It wasn't, hey, I wrote, uh, I wrote these things that I recognize. I'd like to apologize for. Now you write yours. Which at that point, that feels transactional. In fact, it feels manipulative. It's I really want this experience from you. I want you to take this ownership. I want to feel this thing. So I'm going to do it as a tool to try to get what I'm really wanting. Whether that is what's going on consciously or not, that's often how it can end up being received. So the fact that it sounds like that's not what you did, it was a pure, well, as you said, first and foremost for yourself, sort of like a part of your inventory of your own process, and kind of getting clear with yourself of kind of like we were doing in the Evolved Masculine Power program process that you did with me and my team, to really help you get clear on who is the man that you're wanting to be. And when you look at your present and recent past, how in alignment with that man have you been? And what would it take for you to be more in alignment with that man? So it sounds like you were in some sort of a process like that, and did your apology from that place. That you want to express to her the ways in which you feel like you were not showing up as the man that you would like to be.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's spot on. There was, I was getting coaching Jamin Patel, shout out at that time.
Awesome.
Because, I was working with him in some men's work, and he was really the one that showed me how to, like, Bhagavad Gita talks about this too. Do something for the purpose of doing it and not be concerned about what the outcome is.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
And that's everything right there.
So this helped her see a possibility that during that first session she wasn't able to see.
Right. And it wasn't just a letter, it was also, acts too. It was going over when it was my nights not with the kids, and going over and helping put them to bed. And so there was more like reaching out and trying to be in their lives during her time. And so that I think that was a big part of it as well. But again, all of these I had to, in my mind, think that and know that I'm doing this just because it's what I want to do, and it's okay whatever that happens. Because if I'm concerned or worried about how it's going to be taken, or if she replies back to me, then it's not going to be as pure.
Yeah, it's she's going to feel that. And like I said, it can have this feeling of manipulation. It can also build up your sense of resentment within you. If you're doing it for a particular result, and what if that result is not actually happening, then it can feel like that there's this broken contract. Meanwhile, there was no agreement on this. This is all inside of you. So it's just another place where anger and resentment can end up growing. So the one thing that this leaves me with, though, is this concern of it sounds like you've been really leaning in and showing up in very powerful ways, and the various forms of support that you've gone to, both with various parts of my work, with Jamin's work. He's a friend, so great, love that. And other things that you have done have allowed you to just show up, and the fact that you're much further into the healing post-accident, probably more connected into your own strength and power again, that you've been able to lean in and show up much more. But my concern that is, where are your needs in all of this? And I don't want to see you just repeat the same pattern in a different way, of just trying to show up in a particular way, but not actually knowing or taking care of your own needs, only for that later to come out in a really intense way.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of my biggest hesitations is knowing how much I've changed. Will that be enough to make the relationship work? Do I need her to change? You can't ever wait for somebody else to change, but like it's a relationship too, right?
It's a very tricky thing. This comes up quite a bit in relationships in the personal development world or whatever, is that quite often one of the people in the relationship is feeling this drive for to focus growth, change, transformation, what have you, and the other one, no, not so much. Maybe even hardcore resistance, digging in feet, or hell no to it. And yeah, as you said, you can't force it. You can't make somebody else like do that work, because that's what it is. It is work. It takes a willingness to get vulnerable, not just with somebody else, but with yourself, to get real, to be uncomfortable, to experience all sorts of uncomfortable things in order to grow. And if you're not ready for that, you're not ready for that, period. So you did your part. You focused on you, and going through changes that have left you better off and as a better man as a result, no matter what, from what I'm hearing. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes, 1,000%.
And so what happens at this point is, in relationship, is that sometimes it's sometimes no, the changes that one person makes just exacerbate the differences between the two of you, and the difference between the two of you grows greater because you have changed and your partner has not, and you're just in different places now, and things that you tolerated before or what have you just are you just don't have space for anymore. You're not willing to just have in your life anymore, because of these changes that and self-growth that you have been through. So that's the ickier outcome, which does happen. Now, the plus side to that outcome is you have still grown, and who you are moving into that next phase is still like greater. As a result, your next relationship tends to be more in alignment, tends to be smoother, etc. Now, thank you, Minty. She's like, don't forget the kink. We'll get there next. And no wiggling out of this next, Jake. We're going to have to tie you down and force it out of you. So the other possibility, the one that most of us end up hoping for in this type of situation, is that your change causes a reconfiguration of the relationship, because it just has to. You are a different person now, and the relationship, she has to adjust in some form. And so sometimes that adjustment is one of inspiration. It's being inspired by what she sees in you and the changes that she has seen, a softening in the places that had gotten harder or more defensive. And all of this her own openness occurs, or her own inspiration to like take on her own stuff, to grow in her own way. Probably not by doing the exact same things that you did. It may look wildly different than your path, but it can catalyze a partner's path. Now, the real tricky thing is you can't expect it. You can't, because the moment that the partner feels like the pressure that, oh, now he is expecting, demanding, wanting me to do this thing, then that can lead to more of a resistance than ever to going in that direction. She can't have a sense of inspiration if she's already feeling expectation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, kinky man, or with the kinky wife, I don't know which it is yet. Let's open up this conversation. I'm sure we'll weave everything together.
Yep. This is how I got on the show. It's easier. Yeah, so on our date, she was like, I'm very nervous. I got something to share with you. And it's that she is into BDSM. And I don't know how to get too much into details, because she might not want me to share that. So out of everything we shared, right? I don't know. Why not?
Um,
But but yeah, so it was like I've been trying this stuff while we've been separated, and I really like it. And so we talked about that a little bit, and she likes, part of the B, and she likes part of the D and the M, right? And it fits with what I want to do too, right? That's what's
okay, just for clarity's sake, so first of all, BDSM. I love this acronym because it's actually 6 letters in those 4 letters. BD, bondage and discipline. DS, dominance and submission. S and M, sadism and masochism.
okay. Didn't realize that.
So they were all, each of those have their own flavor, their own play to their own kink to them, and so I'm just a little curious of what you are willing to share around those roles. Is it primarily dominance and submission, aka like
Yes.
intentionally playing with power dynamics?
It
One of
is.
you.
It's that
Mhm.
exactly, and we both fit the traditional gender roles there.
So by that you mean that she likes playing with submission and to play with a man who will step into that dominant, particularly sexual role.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
how
Which to
did
me is just
how
like really fascinating. It's
okay,
like, okay, that sounds amazing.
okay.
And I never thought it was something that would have come up between us. And
Mhm.
so here's a lot of hope for me.
And how long ago did this come up?
A couple months back.
So how have you played? Have you explored these?
No, we
Uh,
haven't. Like,
so it's
yeah,
still been in fantasy realm for you anyway over the past few months.
yes.
And sorry, I have a comment in here also from Minty that I'm gonna bring on because I'm learning how to do that. And look, I can't bring it on because I still don't know what I'm doing. Okay, well I'll read it. So, she said, "Can you give us a breakdown of the other elements for others who may not know?" So, meaning, uh, I said bondage and discipline. Bondage, tying up restraints. Discipline. This is the inflicting of punishment, uh, which could be, well, discipline, like right, wrong, like pleasure and well, it's more, yeah. We'll say this punishment element, and whereas sadism and masochism is about pain and humiliation. Uh, Sadism is the one who gets off, finds an erotic charge from the inflicting of pain and or humiliation on somebody else. Masochism is one who experiences enjoyment, pleasure, erotic charge from being humiliated and or experiencing pain. So these things are not necessarily cut or dry. You don't necessarily fit cleanly in one or the other, or maybe not at all. You may just want to explore any one of those, all of them, none of them, whatever. None of these things. I'm a big believer in this whole erotic exploration. There's an infinite world of sexual possibilities out there. It doesn't mean that you have to be into every one of them, but at the same time, if you are, and you have others who want to play with you there, and everybody's a big 100% consensual fuck yes, then have at it, have fun. And it sounds like this your wife put forward, I mean, she had her own transformation. It was just in a different realm. She had this sexual awakening, this recognition, this realization, getting in touch with a part of her sexuality that sounds like previously she wasn't very aware of, or at least it was kind of sleeping, and now she's presenting it to you, which is fucking great if you're wanting, if you're wanting to be with her, especially the fact that you did not respond with you're into what? Freak. Um, it sounds more like this brought up a sense of curiosity, intrigue, fascination, maybe even turn on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I've, I think there's a lot of shame around it. And it's
Mhm.
something that I've been interested in, right? I've never explored it, but it's always been like, oh, that could be a lot of fun.
Well, the
Um,
very fact that she's brought it up to you, it is an indication that at least some part of her wants to know what it would be like to explore this with you. There's some part of her, the part of her most likely that the part of her that does want to see your marriage rekindled, to come into some sense of healthy marriage again, is seeking that. That part of her is like, I've touched something that's been very powerful for me. Can I have that with this man? You.
right.
And so what does that bring up for you? I know you're saying it like it's
That's
you
what's
go.
that's a big, I mean, it's a sign of hope for me, right? It's like, it's the twist in the story that's like, what, that it's just a surprise that
Mhm.
that makes sense to me. But
What do you mean by it makes sense to you?
well, it's like, so I think in our falling of in the relationship, it was all about these roles in like societal roles in gender that wasn't matching up with what we wanted to do, like in terms of taking care of the house and me thinking I'm doing fine doing my job. And so it makes total sense that we would explore that together in the sexual realm of like where it's a safe place to do it,
Mhm.
right? So it's like these very strong urges in an arena that we could like actually explore it together instead of arguing about chores. We're like,
Okay, so this is the thing I'm very curious about, because not very long ago, you were arguing over chores, and she
yeah,
was, you could argue seeking to dominate you, aka be the overpowering force to get you to submit to her vision or idea of how the household chores should be divvied up. And um, you know, shortly thereafter, she's like, I'm really craving your dominance. What meaning do you put to that?
um, well, I mean, the thing that I see is that she's done some work. So like she's admitted into that she thinks that she was being emasculating in our relationship. So she's said she sees that she was taking on this domineering role and not relaxing into just being okay with it. Right? Because we have maids that come over and clean the house, yet the house is not clean enough. So it was the chores were just the easiest way to argue about the fear that was underneath it, right? And in her
And
way,
what's that
it's
fear?
trying to the fear was us not being together, right? Like our fear, my anger coming out, making her fearful.
Mhm.
The way that we argued about that, because we weren't able to talk about that, was the chores. And so
Mhm.
she kind of kicked into the more traditional masculine role of trying to drive and make changes when I was trying to heal.
So again, for what our viewers and listeners, quite often the thing that you're arguing about is not what you're arguing about. Great example right there.
No.
So, out of curiosity, why have you not, since it's been a couple months, at least few 2-3 months since she said, I like being dominated in the bedroom, uh, why have you not gone there?
Because there is another person in the picture,
The man who is dominating her in the bedroom?
her. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And so she doesn't have space in for it.
And
Which and don't get me wrong, I want, this is where I'm trying to make the decision if this is what I really want to do, right? Because if I'm to step into my power and just put that aside and make it happen, like that's probably what she really wants. Right?
ding, 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 ding.
Right, exactly.
But you have to make the decision first.
But,
But
but I don't, yeah, exactly. I don't, that's my hesitation. This is my hesitation because I don't know if I want to do that and trigger everything else. Right.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
So okay, what we're just hitting on right here, I think, is really key. So I don't want to jump off of it too quickly. That what I'm hearing with my decoding hat on, etc., is that she's kind of laying it all out for you, giving you these various breadcrumbs, and that there is this piece of if you want me, take me, claim me, and you're currently in a state of do I?
Right.
Is that so?
Accurate. It's really accurate. But because
Also,
go ahead.
keep in mind she's only going to stay in that state for so long.
Right.
And so what is it that's going to, what is the missing piece for you? I mean, you clearly, part of you wants it, because what the fuck would we be talking about this for the past hour? Um, and then part of you is afraid, essentially afraid of falling into the old patterns, afraid of the harm on the kids, afraid of losing the parts that you have discovered since your separation, or rediscovered since your separation.
Mm, right.
And when I'm putting forward these things, if I have something wrong, please let me know.
Yeah. I mean, where my mind is going is that it's has to be about more than that.
Hmm.
But as I say that, it's like, why not just do the thing that feels like the right thing to do instead of getting wrapped up in like, because what I'm trying to do is build our respect back together. Like I'm trying to build our trust back together
It's
and have
wise.
that foundation. And for me, this, if it's just about sex and there's not that foundation underneath it, but I think I'm going about it all wrong, right? Like
Well,
it's
these are these twin driving needs inside of us, both men and women. There is that need for a sense of like safety and security and comfort and predictability, and that whole end of things. And there's this need for sex, eroticism, charge, adventure. And these two needs of ours can often be in conflict with one another. And so you're feeling like there's this choice right now between just fucking going for it, just going and fucking, and just grabbing her, pinning her down, and showing her how you can take her and how you are claiming her and making her yours. And then the other part of you that's like, you want to make sure that you're creating a sense of a strong foundation of trust, so that you're not just kind of getting swirled into this erotic charge, but there's no foundation, then you're just going to find yourself in the same place repeated again. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Those are the two sides. Yeah.
So the challenge for her right now is that, if I understand correctly, a lot of her experience with you has been as a prior to the big blowout and the health crisis, etc., you were always you took care of things, and there was a sense of stability and safety, etc. And now she's been off on sexy adventures and has that whole part of her swirled up. And you don't want to be in a place where she really feels like she has to choose, which, quite frankly, so many of us end up facing at some point in our lives. Feel like we have to choose between our erotic selves and like erotic desires and a sense of safety, family, security.
Yeah, I think looking at it, this dichotomy is definitely helping here.
When in our hearts, I think that many of us really crave to find a way to have it all. To crave to, how do we have that balance between, like, yes, where you have your stable family unit, and you have this, this underlying new erotic charge and sexy adventure that you're experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, and we had that before the kids, which the kids naturally put a pause on that for a little bit, physically, right? And then my
Certainly
uncle,
can put a major challenge on it.
yeah.
I do know that.
So yeah, this is why I think this is why I think it's so key. This potential charge between us.
Do you feel the erotic charge between the two of you now?
I do at times. The thing is, there's just like, I think there's still healing that I need to do. Like there's sexual trauma from my past childhood that is still tangled up in it, right? So I think I need to unravel that for it to really be pure, right? Like for it to really purely express myself. There's still some like hooks in there.
Okay, so one, I'm a big fan of, like, do the work. Then if you're aware of that, great. Like, address the
Do you know anybody that
great.
on that sort of stuff?
I'm very happy to talk with you about that. Whether me personally, or, like I said, I've got like, I have a great Rolodex when it comes to these areas. Can make referrals, no problem. So I am a big fan of that, and I don't necessarily feel like it has to be weight. That that you can't experience that erotic charge until you have these underlying things addressed. Getting those things addressed will certainly help allow it to be cleaner, for certainly much less likely for things to kind of blow out in a messy direction. But if right now is a time where the two of you are trying to decide whether you're gonna sustain your marriage or not, I want to bring this back to focus on these two pieces and how you can have them both met. The how that you can, this really goes for both of you, but how you can create a trust in a safety and security for your familial unit, for, as well as how you can feel that within yourself, and what it is that you need for you to feel that trust and safety and security within the relationship and the family once more. And two, having a hard time with this, like, compressed screen. Two is this this erotic charge and this brand new opening that's occurred. Now, I'm going to bring up one other possibility, which, whether I don't know your history enough, and I certainly don't know it about our audience. There's also the possibility of some form of non-monogamous arrangement, that which is what you're in currently. You are in some form of relationship with one another. There are other people involved. You're in what's currently a more largely socially condoned element of non-monogamy at the moment. But it's also possible for the two of you to choose something where it's like, okay, your family and relational, even emotional needs are met together in this way, and there's certain space in your relationship for certain kinds of sexy adventures that happen outside of strictly the two of you. And there's so many different ways that can look. This is, again, not for everyone, but for whatever reason, there are more people currently in American society anyway who would be more prone to just quietly cheat than to openly and in full agreement do something like what I'm speaking of. And of course, the third option is, no, the two of you find a way to have those needs met fully within your marriage and between the two of you alone. from my position, I hold no preference. For you, find what you ultimately need to find what works for the both of you. If this is the direction that you're choosing, again, you have to decide: is this the path that you're going to take? I get it is a risk. I get that choosing the separation, into full divorce, is a risk. Either way, a choice is going to have to be made.
Right.
And nothing moves forward until that choice is made.
Right. Yeah. And I know that I can feel the choices coming sooner. We've had so many different talks about it over the last few months. But this has been really good for some perspective on it.
I do think that I do think that you need to have some hot sexual experience with your wife.
Yeah.
Soon, relatively soon. I don't think that she could fully make that decision otherwise.
Right.
That until then, there will be that feeling inside of her like she has to choose this sexual awakening and all the stuff that's brought up for her, or a hope for marriage and family stability, a hope that recent past has shown her will take more for her to have the full faith in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes so much sense, because there's all this hesitation around even mentioning it to me, and so I can totally see how it is. And even in my mind before this, it does seem like two totally separate things that can both be met.
Yeah, and the separation for this long and the dating, etc., can really help in this regards, because it has created a bit more like newness, mystery, etc. Like there's this whole part of her that you know now that you don't actually know, and you have the opportunity to explore and discover. The thing that I want to caution you about a little bit is that. And maybe if I could caution her a little bit around, is that it sounds like all this is very new for you as well, and there might be a learning curve.
Right.
There might be a learning curve, and if the person that she's playing with is more experienced in this realm, she might have stepped into a dynamic that was a bit more fluid from the start. Whereas again, with you, you have past emotional entanglement, all the wounds, etc., from the past that can be entering the bedroom with you, and the fact that this is a learning curve. So first and foremost, I want you to have that patience with yourself. That your first experience might just be complete fireworks, be absolutely amazing. It might be like, holy shit, I had no idea. And as you said, as you kind of hinted at earlier, a foundational piece for that really will be about you giving yourself permission to access that part that exists within you. Is arguably very primal aspect of our masculine energy and essence. I personally am a big believer of that when you're going to step into that like yeah, that kind of like very intense, overpowering element of masculine sexual energy. The mistake that men can make that can cause women to go into fear, and quite frankly, deserved fear or contraction in some form, is that they do so while lacking attunement. So in that moment, it is just he is just all focused on himself, and there's like a lack of real awareness of what her experience is, and that's where her own boundaries can get crossed, where she can physically be harmed, emotionally what have you. Whereas if you're diving into this area, which I am a fan of, that it helps to simultaneously really cultivate your sensitivity. Believe it or not, once more, these things that seem sort of like opposite, but to work on them together, to develop a greater attunement, to be able to feel like what is happening for her in each moment as you're ravishing her, so that you can adjust, so that you can notice the moment something is starting, it would start to feel uncomfortable and not quite right for her, and you can adjust in that moment, instead of either A, just not noticing and continuing to ram right ahead, or B, be notice her contraction in some way and go into hurt little boy mode, like, oh no, I did it wrong. Oh, you hated, there's something wrong with me. Oh, I can never live up to this other person. God, I'm such a loser, etc., etc., etc. Probably not all voiced in that. Probably not all voiced in that way, but where there's that contraction in you, where maybe she would even feel like, okay, now she's got to caretake you, or in whatever manner, ends up being quite a turnoff. Wow, I really fucked up my voice there. How's that land for you?
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I read a book, The New Topping Guide, and it talks about that a lot. So I've been doing a little research. But yeah, I think you're spot on with the attunement of it, of not getting too carried away, and really as a dance.
Yeah, carried away is an interesting thing. Yeah, it really is about, I mean, you can get carried away, just get carried away together.
Okay.
That the attunement really is about being in connection with, versus, again, the getting carried away with yourself, and she's there.
Right.
So it is an interesting dance, and one that you really only refine through practice. But hopefully you enjoy the practice. Hopefully you both enjoy the practice. I mean, even if ultimately the two of you decide that this isn't the way that you're wanting to go, that I mean, I think that you're both craving to at least see what this would be like together.
I think so too. Yeah. The fact that it's even come up, I think it's just been hesitation on my part to make something happen. But I am seeing that.
Why? What's that hesitation?
I mean, there's lots of reasons that I come up with, but I mean, I think honestly that is not the point. I think the point is that this is the opportunity, a situation, an opportunity that's presented itself that we're both into, and she's not going to be like, just take me. Like, it's going to have to be me that makes that happen, right? So then I have to get the situation. I have to arrange it. I have to make sure that the kids are watched. I have to, I'm going to have to be the one that creates the situation. And I love that, right? I love that. That's
and you have to. Exactly. I'm like, on one hand you have to, on the other hand you get to.
Yeah, no, I get
you get to be the one to arrange all of it.
For sure. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Again, particularly for our audience here, that those two things of having to and getting to have very different flavors to them. They feel very different in the body, don't they? Like, I have to feels like, okay, that's my obligation, that's my chore. It's like, okay, I guess I have to do that in order to get this outcome that I want, versus like, oh, I get to, like, this is an opportunity, this is something that you can enjoy. This could be like, oh yeah, like I wasn't doing that before, I get to do that now. I'd never, it's a new experience, new exploration. I get to enjoy every step of the way. And so that's really what I want for you, is for you to enjoy those steps as much as possible. And if it does prove to be if it does prove to not be in the cards for the two of you, at least at this point, you would know that the intrigue fantasy, desire, curiosity that you're both holding of what this would be like together would be met. And you're the beautiful thing about BDSM is that when done right, so to speak, you're consciously exploring the power dynamics between the two of you versus unconsciously just letting them fucking blow out however they're blowing out. And so there's so much that can be learned through that. And the intentional stepping into roles, intentional use of power. And so explore, play, bring it back in. Let us know. I mean, the truth is, like, I could dive in with this with you for so much longer, but we are approaching our 90-minute mark, and and for now, that's what we're keeping this podcast at. But yeah, I'd love for you to do a check-in after.
All right.
After you get to make something happen.
Yeah, I want that
whatever you end up choosing. Great. If you want that accountability, then do you want to put some sort of timeline on this? Some sort of date by which you're like, yes, I'm gonna dominate my wife.
2 weeks.
Okay, so I don't know what this over the course of entering a new month. Can you give me a date? It's like somewhere on the 7th, 6th.
I'm not gonna look at the calendar. Yeah, say the 7th.
I gotta say. Sure. 7th, whether that's 2 weeks from today or 2 weeks from tomorrow, whatever, the 7th. Awesome. And yeah, and again, more than anything, so there's two pieces I want you to really keep in mind as you do this. One, have patience and compassion with yourself, that you may not get it all, quote unquote, perfectly right. That whatever it is with this experience, that you end up having, if you end up having it again, there's a good chance it will be better. And certainly like 10 times from now, it will be better still. It's like going into anything that's new for you. Like your first time, however good it is almost never as good as as you are with it, the level of comfort with it, your know-how, etc. So one, patience and comfort with yourself, and that kind of learning journey. And along with that, have fun. That's really what's going to make the difference, is for the experience between the two of you, period. This other man may, and I don't even know, may have X, Y, or Z technique and tool down more deeply than you do, but you have some other things with your wife that he does not have and can never have. And so I let go of any sense of comparison and what have you. Focus on just creating a new and potent experience for the two of you, and let it be what it is.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to put it into my calendar to just do a little check-in with you, though I actually would like for you to check in with me on the 7th. I'll be a backup if you don't, but I believe accountability actually works best. If I'm not chasing you down, you're coming clean to me.
The situation does not work that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And Minty adds, love the idea of follow-up. Yay! So yeah, I'm very curious. I wish you the very best with this. No matter what, I'm sure it will be very enlightening. Both the experience itself as well as the conversations that will end up almost certainly end up occurring in the days and weeks following.
Mm-hmm.
So for all of our thank you to you, Jake, for being brave and willing to speak so openly and vulnerably on our show, and to help with are still very much in our launching process of the show as we're figuring out what we are and how we're doing this. Thank you to all of our audience and our viewers, and oh, look at that. And to be on this journey with us, and as we explore this process of decoding women, deepen our understanding, deepen our understanding of women, and along with that, the deepening of our understanding of ourselves, how we relate with her, how we take what so much of our culture can either just write off as good, like trying to understand women. Look, that's an impossible task. Why bother? Women are just crazy, etc., etc. All these memes, these notions that go through our society. And yes, on one hand, women are an unsolvable mystery. They, no matter how much energy and attention you put in, we put in to solving the puzzle that is woman, to understanding, we are seeking to understand the unknowable, and that's what makes it so much fun. That's what makes it such a worthwhile journey. Just as humankind has spent all of our existence seeking to understand this life and this universe, and what is all this? What is this whole world around us? What is our place in this? How do we relate to this world? How does it work? How does it tick? And still, millennia, tens of thousands, however, hundreds of thousands, however long human beings have been around, look at all we have come to understand, and yet still a drop in the bucket of all that which we do not know. And yet, has there been a greater endeavor that humans have set forth on? No, we will never fully understand this life in this universe as it is. The complete unknowability of it is what makes it so fascinating. It's what lights us up and sparks us up so much across so many generations in trying to understand. And we will never fully understand. But the journey is so worthwhile. So thank you for being on this journey with me. I will see you next Tuesday as we bring on our next, hopefully, yummy, attractive, influential, interesting woman to work on her decoding. Until then, you may find me in an unscheduled stream on twitch.tv/decoding, decoding in coding language. So D3c0d1ng, W0m3n. I'm sure if you look me up, you'll just find me. And we'll put the link in the show notes here as well. If you think that you would make a great guest for the Decoding Women show, either as a female guest that you seek to, what would it be like to be more deeply decoded? Can we help you more deeply understand yourself? You have that level of openness, please do let us know. We're definitely seeking our interesting women to bring on here who can have these deep conversations with us. If you are a man who's struggling or seeking some sort of resolution, clarity around your relationships with women, sex, your sense of yourself as a man in this modern world and how to be in it, reach out. We can have you on the show. All right. This is Dustin Garrick.